get both of them just in case. Yes, please.
Oh, yeah.
This one's not staying on.
Oh, it must be dead.
Just use the other one.
Oh, there it goes.
Got it?
You guys get the picture I sent as well. It kind of talks about the different degrees on the driveway.
This one.
I did not get anything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's on their desk.
Oh, it's the one on the desk. Okay. All right.
You guys ready? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the long story short is the house is just too high, right? And when it was surveyed wrong. And last fall, when I was trying to get it to grade, I had Chris come out a few times, and we were looking at it together on grading. And it was just determined then that it's just there's just no way to get it to the grade it needed to be. And so we got the low, because the one advantage is I have the stacked garage, right, with the suspended slab. So the lower garage, which is the size of a 3-car garage, but you can, with its orientation, you can only get 2 cars in it. That lower garage is all to code and passed last fall. And that's how the temporary occupancy permit was given. It's based off that lower garage and driveway. And that upper garage driveway, when we saw that we couldn't get it there, we tried our best. In fact, we dug up the gas line that's running up the driveway and dug down as far as we could. And doing the math, it's 28 inches high. The house is 28 inches high. And so I'd have to have like close to 40 more feet of driveway in order to hit the right grade, which I physically can't have, right? So in talking to the building team and just asking what options we had, the only thing that they suggested was that we make the bottom garage the primary garage, because it is a 2-car garage, and I think that meets requirements. And that we run it with the permit that's the main garage, and that upper garage, like the factors that we talked about is, can an ambulance get up the driveway? Can a fire department get up the driveway? Is it safe to get up the driveway? With the lower garage, it is. The upper garage, when it's icy, it's not. And we park our garage in the lower garage, or our cars in the lower garage, and the driveway in front of it as well. And that's how we combated it this winter, right? And it worked. I mean, it's not ideal, but it worked. But I don't see any other option. We exhausted the options. You just can't make up. You don't have enough driveway to make up that other 28 inches that it's high. So, yeah.
Do they have any questions out of the gate? So you've been there during a winter.
Yeah.
So how much do you use the upper one in the winter? That's the one that concerns me.
I mean, I don't have to use it at all in the wintertime. And that's what we do. Is if it was dry, we'd pull up there. But if there's storm coming in, we have the 2-car garage plus the driveway in front of the 2-car garage. And so we have 3 cars, so we just use that area. So I'm really vigilant of clearing the garage, or the driveway. But a couple times I did test it with snow on it to see if I could get down it at the 15%. I think it's like averaging 14.7%. And you can get down it. Like, I didn't slide actually, but.
And if you had to tear it out, is there any way to configure it to
No.
make it better? There's no way.
No, we already extended it from as far as we could from the left side. We moved the driveway, like the entrance, like 15 feet to the east to extend the garage or the driveway. And it helped some, but There's no way. Yeah, I need another 40 feet. Yeah.
Cause I know some of them on Deep Forest, there's one and it, they did one of these, kind of the S thing.
And that's what it is. It's the driveway's 130 feet long. It's just I've gone to the max building envelope on both sides and curved it as much as I could. And we did redesign it a little bit to get like an extra 15 feet, but that was the max that we could get.
And I think that one took up 2 lots. They had 2 lots.
Yeah, that's probably what it is too. Yeah.
So, Wayne, if you don't mind, I think it would be useful to hear the city's perspective and the applicable ordinance. And so, Aaron, I think it's also interesting to note and important to note. So you said there was a gas line that we ran into.
Yeah. So
I guess in certain respects prevented you from building in a different way.
So what we ended up, yeah, correct. So if you see that middle section that's like 19 to 21%, those are 4-foot sections, by the way. So there's like a 12 or 16-foot section that we're trying to get down as much as we could. And so my asphalt guy, I had him come and grade it. We just kept pulling away until we exposed the caution tape from the gas line. So we knew we were only, 6 inches from the gas line, and we didn't want to go any farther. If we
That's
could
not
have,
an option. Is it an option to move the gas line or?
I don't think so. That one was already moved. So I don't, everywhere it's at, it's underneath the driveway, that whole side. So. And if that was, and if we could move it and we could gain that 28 inches that we needed, it'd be totally worth it, right? But even if you move the gas line, we could go, we don't have the extra 40 feet of driveway to get the extra length, correct? Yeah.
Okay, well, so if we could just take a minute and have Wayne just give kind of the procedural overview of what we're doing here and the applicable code.
Our ordinance does allow for the individual to come to the city council and request a waiver, modification of the driveway slope. And that pretty much is the only option that they have to get a waiver. They could go, and that's provided for. There's another option to go before a hearing officer, pay $600 for that, and let a hearing officer, who's the attorney that we've hired, one of the attorneys, to hear the case and make a decision on it. So I don't know that their decision that would be, their perspective is going to be the same as yours, except there's a body here of 5-6 people versus one person. We checked, I had our building inspector check yesterday, and what Aaron has said, I'd confirm from his review and examination that getting up to that first garage is fine. It's not a problem. It's after that then where it's anywhere from 16 to 18 to 19% as you follow the driveway up to the upper garage and parking in there. And I don't see any way that it can be accommodated any more than what Aaron has already done to try to lessen the percentage of grade there with the driveway. So whether you want him to abandon that top, that's going to be, I guess, up to your decision, or whether you would allow the variance, so to speak, and allow him to use that upper driveway in the summertime where it's dry weather. That is all up to you to make that decision and any kind of conditions that you want to place on that if there's a variance considered, or to deny outright the use of that upper driveway and just, excuse me, the upper garage, and just allow use of that bottom garage. So those decisions are all up to you, but I concur with Aaron and the things that he said as far as his analysis and review of things. That's the same as the city has as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to just clarify, we've used a few different terminologies, and I just want to make sure that they're synonyms. Variance, waiver, and modification. Are they synonyms? Because we used to have a variance committee, and now that seems to be the council or this paid person. But you use that, are we going to come for a waiver? On our agenda, it says modification. So I'm just trying to decide exactly what we're being asked to consider, because a variance says keep it the way it is. A waiver may be considered the same, but modification is a change. So I'm just.
I think our code, and I apologize for confusing you in that regard, but I think it's modification. Was that it, Jody? What our development construction?
Yeah, I see that on here, and I just wanted to make sure.
That's the
that
terminology.
We're talking about the same terminology. Okay,
Yes.
that's what I was just wondering. So with that, you're not seeing that we have any recourse other than, and this was not caught. Why was this not caught before you poured the driveway? Maybe you can help
Oh,
us
it
explain
was.
this, but you still continued to pour it?
Well,
No,
so I mean, it was caught, but I mean, the house is,
the house is too high.
it's up
No,
at
but
that
on
point.
the, on the whole plans, you know, we usually catch these things when a site plan has been done and things are happening, and then if it doesn't meet the standards, then you have to go back to design phase. So why was it never caught along the way? And
It-
we're at this point of a year after occupation, just hearing about it for us.
Yeah, so it was caught in the building phase, right? But it was caught after the house was up. And so there was, I mean, I guess we could have demoed the house, right? But there was, I mean, there's nothing you could do unless you have more land. The drawings say the math works and that you can get that angle. The approved drawings
In the site plan.
and the site plan
So they were
says, the engineer
approved.
says that you can hit that. And the driveway wasn't even as long, but it just, the math didn't work out. So by the time you find out the house is up that point, and so you're like, well, how do you extend the driveway? Like, what options do you have? Like, and so we exhausted that. We regraded it several times, moved things around, trying to get as much length as we could get. And so,
So in the winter, when you can't use that upper garage, do you just use it for storage, basically?
Yeah. yeah, I actually haven't even parked cars in it because and the reason why it's been a year is because I actually built the house myself. It's been a 2-year project that I did with my boys. And so I actually we're finishing the basement. So everything in the upper garage, it's the stuff that we're building for the basement. So we actually haven't even parked cars up there. We parked cars in the lower garage we have the last year or less than a year.
So, but just to confirm, and Wayne, you concur with this, so the site plan did, the math checked out, but then in the execution, then that's when it just didn't really come together in the way one would hope. So, because in my mind, that makes a difference. Like if it looks like it's been engineered and it would work, but then when you actually start putting the shovel to ground, you realize that conditions just don't match up.
Yeah, that's why I asked
Yeah,
that question.
the site plan showed 15% grade on it, and so we don't go to the extent of checking. There's an engineer sign off on that, and we rely a lot on that the builder provides to us with those kinds of things. So it had on 15%. If it had 16, 17%, we wouldn't have allowed it until that was resolved at the very outset of the plan. But the plan did show 15% grade.
And maybe Wayne didn't know this on that up front, but when Corbin worked for the city, I sat in his office because he's like, this is so close. We debated this back and forth, and he had me make several changes. He's like, your gradient's like to the T what our max is. And we met out there, me and him met out there, and we reviewed it together. He's like, I think you can get it. It just, everything has to be perfect, right? And so there was a lot of due diligence on my part and the city's part up front to make sure that the math did work, but as much as we could, but it didn't work out in the end.
And it's extremely hard, especially with our trees, because it's all on the excavator. If the excavator hits that proper depth plus footings and hitting that from the street, that's not easy.
Right. When you're going up that much elevation with story sticks and stuff like that, I can see why he messed that up.
I have another question for Wayne. So Wayne, temporary occupancy is 1 year, which is due tomorrow. Is this
Day, actually.
So is this the only concern that we have as a city to continue or to give this modification to extend the temporary occupancy, or are we waiting for other things as well?
There's some other things that will need to be addressed, but I think those can be addressed. And you are the only body that can address the driveway percentage slope. I think the other things Aaron will be able to address in the course of finishing the construction and so forth there. And
there were-
some other thing, a few other things,
Yeah, I
but
think there
they're,
were 5 items. One of them is there's a couple areas where the grading wasn't 2% away from the home, like 2 little areas that I had to do. I had to add an expansion tank to the fire sprinkler system to relieve the pressure as it builds. Those have already actually been done. So I think
Did you get the test board in so the sprinkler?
Yeah. Yeah, and actually Ted already checked that, but it didn't have the expansion tank on it. And so that pressure was building. And so I added that tank over the weekend. And so he just has to come out and look
So
at those
you're saying that
items.
if we grant this modification tonight for the driveway, all of the other things will be done in a very
Potentially by the
timely-
end of the week or two, depending on weather and drying out. I think really the only one that isn't in process or basically done is the 2 areas. And there's like a 20-foot or probably only 15-foot section that needs to have a 2% grade on the back corner of the house and then the one side. So it's like 3 hours in an excavator, a mini X to do it, just depending on what happens with weather
Okay,
over the
so
next few days.
I'm gonna go down through what the inspector saw yesterday. And we can talk about that. Wayne, you can verify, did Chris verify the slope on the lower driveway?
he did,
So we are 15% or less.
yes.
So, the rock line ditch is not up to standard?
That's the first I know. Yeah, I didn't get the report on that.
So he says the lower garage slope. So I really want to verify this because he said that the lower garage slope exceeds 50% grade, and obviously the upper goes 20%. But I understand what you're asking for on the upper, but he does say the lower exceeds 50. The driveway approach lacks the 2% grade away from the asphalt edge. The culvert is not constructed with the accordance to approved site plan. I didn't even see a culvert.
There needs to be a larger culvert there.
So I'm just going through these. This isn't necessarily, we're looking at another temporary. Make sure you understand.
It's a 10-inch culvert, right?
15.
It says 15 right now. Well, at least on your plan you gave us, it says 15 culvert.
I don't know why.
There's areas around the foundation may not meet the required slope, retaining walls and window wells. So there's some questions here. One, we need some verification that the rock walls that we put in are less than.
Yeah, we had Mike inspect that. I think I have the report saying that passed.
That would be good. Because if they're less than 4 feet, they don't have to be engineered.
Correct.
That's gonna be important, so we have to have that inspection, get your final fire inspection. My other concern is that, you know, this driveway was brought up, just a couple days over a year ago, brought up in
Yeah.
and ended up getting paved. Now I'm also being told that lower driveway's not right.
So when it,
Well,
that's news to me because Chris and I walked through every foot of that lower
we'll do that- We'll do
driveway.
that verification.
Yeah.
And so I
And-
think that needs to be verified. We need to go back and verify that. Now, if it was when we were dirt, because I was up there
Yeah.
for a gas leak. So this
Yeah.
is important. These rules are really important to me
Yeah.
as an EMT and a firefighter. And so I've got concern, real concerns about that. I get the secondary, and I kind of get that idea because I thought about the thing. But, you know, some of these, and then there was some notes. Actually saw some pictures of the window wells.
Yeah, the ICF window wells.
Don't believe me, they're actually
Or,
3 feet distant.
yeah, I think,
But I think it's important to keep in mind that the council's only decision.
Our only decision is the thing, but I want to make sure, because you said there were just a few things, and I wanted to make sure that I brought
Yeah.
those up, that might cause a problem.
now that code is on an egress window, correct?
All window wells.
Okay.
So we've got gratings, you know, when they're so deep, they have to have gratings and ladders. You don't have to have ladders yet.
Yeah.
But I believe that it will require 3-foot distance to glass.
Okay. There's one window well that's really small in that lower bathroom. It's like a 2-foot window. And,
I'm
and
just
that
bringing
one may
those
be
up as
less.
things that you
Yeah.
are gonna,
Yeah.
might want to look at. And I do understand the secondary. I was concerned about this from the first time I saw it.
Yeah.
Just because it is from a fire and EMS. stand.
Yeah.
How long did you say the driveway is? I was trying to,
I think it's like 130 feet to
so,
that upper section.
so, and that's within, for emergency vehicles, then, Wayne, that is not needing the turnaround at the top or any of that stuff. It's
Correct.
within that range.
Mm-hmm.
And if we consider it as a secondary access, it would.
Well, I like the fact that the front door is connected straight there to the first primary, right? So if you're headed as EMS, that's where you're gonna head, right? It's through the front door most likely, or the garage,
So
pending.
it depends. And often depends on what we get told as we're riding. Seeing the best access to living areas. Upper garage. My guess. But again, somebody might be. So we're gonna have to go up fairly soon. If we don't. Go up. But if there's, you know,
So, Wayne, what is the standard? I mean, with the variance, the standard is clear. So in this case, does the council have a specific standard that they would be applying as to whether or not they can grant this modification? Is there something that we looked at in terms of, okay, well, it meets these criteria and therefore it is deserving of the modification? Or is it just kind of a circumstantial sort of, well, I can see your point, Aaron, and therefore I can understand how you are in almost an immovable spot in this respect.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, I just
There-
didn't know if there was something that would be useful guidance.
There
in
used
that
to be
respect.
some guidance.
There's
that-
flexibility in, as you determine and interpret what's been said here. It's not a yes or no. could be yes with conditions or could be a no, or so there's a lot of related options that you have in making a decision. It's not an absolute. You can put conditions on it if you choose to do so.
And we have done that before on driveways. We've granted the variance with conditions and,
Variance.
Let's use the
yes,
word
a
modification.
modification.
You fell on your own sword.
I know. She's changing our vernacular here.
So Aaron, what is it that you're asking for? Are you asking for unrestricted use of that secondary driveway? Are you asking for it with certain conditions applied? I'm just curious what you're here.
I mean, I don't know if I thought that end of it through, but the modification that, you know, my wish would be to use that upper driveway when it's dry and safe, right? And not use it when it's not.
I think if you approve the driveway, you let him use it. I mean, yes, it's his own property.
I agree. I don't vote on this. but
Private
agree with you.
I mean, I'm property rights.
Yeah.
You have certain property rights when you own the property. If he uses it when he shouldn't, he takes on that risk because it's his own property.
So Aaron, I've got a question for you on that entrance of the driveway, right?
Yeah.
Code requires typically that we are, well, not typically, always, that it, for the first 3 feet, that there's a 2%
2%
down, right? And we're up. I assume that that was to make sure that this lower portion was as less steep as possible,
I
because that
don't-
would push you back, you know, your starting point.
It wasn't. I think what happened when we did the road base, we had it, and I think when they did the asphalt, they probably went thick right through there. Because
Gotcha.
Chris was, I mean, me and Chris walked that whole thing together, and we made sure every inch of that lower driveway met 100% perfect. In fact, it was a little bit off, and I had 2 shovels, and Chris actually helped me dig that down, so we had that.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I know for a fact that we met everything, and I think that's in the paperwork from last fall. That was in October or September.
Do we have that record by chance, Jody? That when Chris did the pre-driveway pour inspection?
It would have been right before the 10th. Or maybe it's actually in June.
It doesn't look like he ever was called to do a pre-driveway inspection. He did a zoning inspection in May of 2024, and then I'm figuring somewhere between May of 2024 and November of 2024, the driveway was poured. Does that sound right?
It was in end of October.
Yeah, and so then he came back in and got a temporary in May.
But when we met, and I mean, Chris was there with me before we got that first temporary, which would have been in June, right? Or May or June.
May of 2024.
So that's, I mean, he did that at the same time. He was out there 2 different times.
I can verify that the retaining wall was complete by Mike Sorensen.
That was
So
in
that was
October or
done
November, right?
November of 2024 under
It was
other.
before that. It was in like May.
Okay, so our modification would basically include then that front section, that first 3 feet, saying that it's acceptable or not. The lower driveway being acceptable for EMS and fire, and then granting the modification saying that you have the right to use that upper as you see fit, potentially. Right? Am I
At my own risk.
understanding that correctly? Basically, those 3 points of us thinking about. Okay.
Grade,
It's a
apron,
no-brainer to
slope.
pass this bid, but
Culvert.
snowplow blade doesn't catch it. It's not.
I don't think we're going to have a problem with the snowplow blade, only because typically that rule, the reason we have that in our code is if we widen the street. So you've noticed on Woodland Hills Drive, we have a few driveways that just like shoot straight up. Because anytime we have to widen the road, because that first 15 feet or so, you know, is city property, it just would drastically increase that. And thus, those first 3 feet are so that we can widen the road and not destroy their slope. But I'm personally not too concerned about that since this is Bridger Circle. It's not Woodland Hills Drive. It's not a pass through. It's not going to become an artery. It's the probability of it being widened. I wish Ted was here, but I can't see that ever happening. So I'm not too concerned about that. And I'm not concerned about the plow hitting it. One, it is, well, it's a cul-de-sac. So that'll be the service truck plowing that, not the 2 big plows. And he'd have to really be off the road if he's going to clip that. And that might not be an Aaron problem. That might be a whoever is driving the service truck problem.
Ben, if the council does the driveway, how does staff handle the culvert then?
I'm wondering if, because
I mean, that's what I'm wondering on some of these unfinished things, how it works into the approval of the driveway.
I mean, if I had to cut
The
that
ditch, the culvert.
out to do a different culvert, that wouldn't be that big of a deal. But I'm wondering if it was measured right with, or if I have like dirt around it to where it wasn't measured right, and I can check that.
Chris measured it yesterday. It was 12-inch on the outside and 9-inch on the inside, according to his measurements. And it's supposed to be a 15-inch culvert.
Which would be an outside dimension. So it's 3 inches small. I think I was under the understanding that it was a 12 inch.
And the site plan shows 15, so it's correct.
Yeah, I think to deal with that, that would probably fall under Ted. Whether he wants to, what he would like to do with that. But for us, I believe per statute, city ordinance, this is the only subject we have this authority on is driveway slope.
Yeah, that's correct.
So
That's
we
the
don't
issue.
offer
Yeah.
variances really on anything else, just driveway slope.
Well, now that but tonight, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm talking in a more.
I'm talking just
comprehensive
our
sense.
authority. I don't think
Well,
we
variances
can.
of any
We
kind.
have some other abilities, like moving the driveway closer to, like we did with the road over here.
Yeah.
Sky Lake.
Yeah.
We moved it closer to the edge so we could actually work that slope. We did give a variance because we didn't.
So
meet
I
the
guess let me, driveway things.
driveway.
I don't know if we have
Probably
any other things.
variances of any sort.
Not variance, modification, sorry.
But usually people only come for variances on things that are hardship. I mean, that's what it's supposed to be for, it's
Yeah.
hardship. And that was kind of the standard we had before, was if it was a variance that was a hardship, that was really, there was no other options, then, and it was good faith effort on both parties. Some of these things, so Wayne, since there are other things that need to be finished, but we are only voting on the driveway part, but they may be connected to, you said earlier, the possibility of maybe putting conditions on, can those other things that are connected, like the culvert or the slope or the drainage,
Ditch also.
I mean, could we put those as the conditions on this, or you guys would just deal with that separately?
Yes, we'll deal with that.
So when you said conditions, what kinds of other conditions could you put on it?
Well,
When you
you're
said-
already saying that, or you could say, yes, we're going to allow him to use the upper driveway instead of tearing it out, using it at his own risk. So that's the kind of condition I was referring
Or
to.
only in the summertime. I mean, I'm not suggesting that, but
Yeah.
those are the types of conditions, yeah. And with respect to the culverts, I mean, I know that it's come up when I was on the Board of Adjustment, like even running parallel, sort of like supplemental culverts. That was at least brought up. I don't know if that is workable, but yeah, I mean, you
I
will
can
have
deal
to
with
get that taken
Yeah,
care
I
of.
can-
And
I'll deal with that. Yeah, I'm not worried about that.
Sherry, do you want to wait till the public comment portion or? Oh, all right.
Yeah, they only blade like half the road when they do that. Yeah.
Okay. Does the council have any other
Or I was
questions?
gonna say something.
not right, I mean, you didn't, my opinion, but if I had that situation of your driveway, I would consider knocking some way, ways to put a guardrail up.
Yeah.
there, keep cars from flying off the street part.
I've actually looked at that. Yeah. Yeah. I have teenage kids, so I don't know that a guardrail is gonna save somebody, but hopefully. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there's a couple of residents in town who have some street driveways, and they actually put more of a, like a curb next to it, so that there was, if it's
There's an
a
idea.
sliding,
There's an
they
idea.
bump into that curb, little short curb, instead of just a whole big fence.
Yeah.
Bump into a curb and it just keeps them on track.
Agreed.
A little rude type
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So-
Bob slid down the driveway.
I just received this from Chris Ambasco. He says, and I asked him about that, the lower section. He says there is a portion about 5 to 6 feet away that marginally exceeds 15% at approximately 5 to 6 feet from the curb. So it sounds like marginally, my assumption is that it doesn't get to 16%.
And that with not having,
Right.
so if we had to crash over the curb, it would far exceed.
I think
Potentially, but it would depend on, it's not for the first 5 or 6 feet.
I know, but we've got,
So
there's like a little bump, probably.
Then it-
I didn't see
yeah,
that.
it, it hits a certain point. But if they lowered this, I don't think it would change this slope here.
it would be awful painful.
It would, but it would change these slopes, right? The slopes in front of that section that's marginally greater than 15%. So,
I guess on the point on
Yeah.
that is that this driveway would be used year round, especially by our fire and EMS. We have to always consider that. And hopefully they never have to come to your home, but we do consider that. So with that little bit of an increase, does that assess the fire department or EMS from adequately getting to their home and being able to access it? Now, I see that they can come in the garage, there's steps that go up to the front. That could be a problem if it's dead of winter. But yeah, there's lots of those. But you feel okay with that slight increase that Len just read from Chris?
And if it's widely increased and we've got a minor exception. I personally would be good with it, but I'm not.
Right.
And I would be, I'd be more comfortable in giving the variance for the upper half, for the modification, the upper half of the driveway and not the lower. That our fire chief has the ability to manage that zone. That makes sense.
Here's what do you don't give, what are you gonna do about it? Like, what is the option? You don't give them up. How?
It's like 14, it averaged like 14.4% or something like that, right? So there must have been a little tiny section where when they were doing that, rolling the asphalt, there's an imperfection or something.
And I'm not willing to say. I'm not gonna stop.
So you're just saying that your decision is only related to the second one? Okay. All right. Does anybody else have any questions for Aaron or Wayne?
Well, I do believe that, and, thing what I just said earlier, so I was just asking, would one of the considerations be then, if we're granting this to this modification, that we could do what we have done on other projects that are this way, and one of those conditions could be putting in those little side curbs? Just for safety.
Sure, I think you could ask them to do that from a safety standpoint. One of the criteria that we have with enforcing code is to make sure that there's no safety issues or that some have been addressed. And I think that's a requirement that could be a condition that you could
The reason I'm
replace.
asking is because although you may take the risk for your own family, we're also taking risk for our firefighters and EMTs, and if they're going to be flying up in all sorts of conditions, you would want to make sure that they felt safe. And although our chief isn't here, I think that might be a compromise in making sure our apparatus doesn't slide off the hill because of the increase in slope.
I mean, I don't think even in the dead of winter, if I haven't cleared my front steps and there's an emergency to get up to the house, you would just still park at that lower garage and come through the garage and the inside stairs. In no case would you have to go up there, but.
There's a little bit above, and that's the thing.
Or maybe
A
it's
little
just
bit
that
above.
little bump.
I don't know, and Ted would know, the kind of the layout, and whether we put it during the lower garage, and whether we have to go. But we have front stairs, and that's always, that's always one of our options.
Yeah.
I just don't want, I don't want to speak for Ted. I don't want him to yell at me.
Yeah.
Well,
fair
you
enough.
really can't. This is our authority, not his.
Well, so there's a variety of motions that can be offered. So Aaron, just so you know, when it comes time to make a decision, so this is just a work session, so
Yeah.
it won't be until we convene the formal council meeting that the decision will be made. So
Yeah.
certainly would be welcome to stay and see how that shakes out, or we can let you know, or whatever you want to do. But there's a dark skies presentation, so
Yeah.
everyone in the community might be interested in that. But
Thank you, Aaron. Yeah.
Can,
thank you
can
guys.
I add
Appreciate
one
it.
thing?
yeah, one.
We're not sure how far, and maybe you know exactly, Aaron, but how far the driveway is away from the property line. And there's a possibility that if he extends it closer to the property line, that he could improve on the percentage of grade. And so that's something too, when you make a decision in your next meeting to allow, we did that with another one, to allow him to go closer to the property line than what he might be now. And I don't know what that is.
We're right. That's what we already did that.
You're on the property line
No,
now?
I'm not at the property line, but I'm right where I can be.
Okay.
But the variance could be that we could, the modification. After a lot of years of saying the other word, modification could be that we extend it closer to the property.
But what you're saying is that probably wouldn't solve the problem anyway, right?
I mean, it might help with the lower, but
I think that lower, I mean, if there's a little bump in it, like the rest of it all hits it. So I
Okay.
wouldn't do that on the lower garage. If there's a bump in it, it's 6 feet of a little tiny bump and it goes to 15.3%. You're just gonna cut out that 6-foot section and redo that 6-foot section, right? It'd be most costly and then it hits, you know what I mean?
Okay.
So, but
All right. Thank you, Wayne. Thanks, Aaron.
yeah, thank you guys.
Okay.
Item 2, dark skies presentation.
Sherry, thank you for assembling this, and Brian.
Cheryl can't be here because she has jet lag really bad, so I'm gonna do her portion. I don't know who the other member is, so I guess it's on me, which I'm happy to do.
Are there any people behind you?
Sherry, just make sure you speak into the mic really clear.
Okay, what I'm gonna screen share with you, actually directly from the dark sky, document, so you don't think that it's something that PTO thought of. I think it is the, what they say about International Dark Sky Places program is a conservation-based program rooted in grassroots advocacy to protect dark skies and the nocturnal environment. The program is structured to ensure that each certified place participates in actions and stewardship that improve the quality of the environment. Dark sky has different classifications that you can go for, and I think all of you do the community one. Community Park Sanctuary Reserve every night sky. I seriously am learning so much on PTR, and I'm so grateful to you guys between tapping trees and making syrup and dark sky and sharing my screens through Zoom. I really appreciate this opportunity. So let's see how we go here. Okay, this is dark sky. There are over 160,000 square kilometers of protected land and night skies in 22 countries and on 6 continents. And this is the map that shows you where all those are. As you zoom in, there's quite a few in Utah. And I understand from the Dark Sky Board that right now there are 20 applications that have been approved and 300 more that are waiting to be approved. So there's a lot of people jumping on board. So I think we would go to the community one. And I'd just like to share with you a video. My speaker. Oh, I may have to go to audio and Zoom.
Right here, see the X?
Yeah, pause your video though, while you're going over there.
Let it go so that if she makes it correct, we'll actually know if it's working.
No, keep
Where
going,
do I
right
want to go
there.
here?
Yeah. He's got an X, you've got it turned off.
They're actually getting a lot of.
Yeah.
Certainly have the ability to have good lighting in your home and still protect the nighttime sky. The most important thing is to decide if you need it, when you need it, and use it just as necessary. Light on all the time. We don't consider darkness justification for lighting something. It's to be a reason. selection of product and to where the light is going to be aimed. Fixture such as this, not at all long, trying to write it down. Very fundamental thing. Light. One measure of the light simply goes where it's going to be useful. Not useful. So, you're being a good neighbor. There's no reason why make sure that control it. Light simple things. And it's actually the same situation. Safety concerns, steady state. But if suddenly light pops on, thing, something light pops on, you know, see somebody switch, something, you're the same. It's a really good idea. Just to see how much light save. Better. But they turn out what temperature. Something that should have something very harsh. You're seeing this, you're seeing blue light. Not a good thing for nocturnal traffic. If you're old like me, blue light shining in your eyes, condition called daily. Somebody falls, safe situation. Safe situation. Can cause another disruption of can happen. Suspected. They not pretty much in a nutshell. And start skies.
Helps our mental health. It affects our mental health. It can reduce anxiety. It can reduce depression. It can reduce cancer. It can reduce. There's so many studies being done. This site is incredible, the information that it gives you about lighting. So the first place really we start is with our ordinance. In terms of applying for dark sky certification, it's a relatively easy process. It costs $250 to make the application. And we include our ordinance in that application, and they review it to see if we would qualify. The current ordinance that we have is from 1993, and several meetings that I've attended here at City Council, they talk about, you know, we need to upgrade our lighting ordinance. So I put in your packets the current lighting ordinance and the proposed lighting ordinance that we did submit to planning to see how planning felt about it. And if you look at, they're basically the same. They're very close. In section A of the new lighting ordinance, the one that looks longer on the paper, I don't think we need to include the Utah flag code. It's just verbiage, but you can uplight on a flagpole. Everything else should be pointing downwards. B is different in that we're asking that the ordinance include that lighting be turned off by 10:30 if people are leaving it on all the time. I think the city code for their lighting is 11 o'clock. It's to be turned off. And not necessarily, how we could include in this also is putting on motion sensors or timers or whatever, particularly motion sensors for security lighting. So it isn't turn your lights off at 10:30, it's please don't have them continuously on after 10:30, which goes along with our disturbing the peace ordinance, which a definition of disturbing the peace, which is also referred to as breach of the peace, is when a person disrupts peace and tranquility in a public space. And I'm not going to get into specifics, but there are people in our community who have lights shining in their home that go right up their stairway from their neighbor. And this obviously affects your tranquility. C is the same as in the old ordinance. The description of lumens and wattage, that's the same. No street lights is an addition.
The lumens are a little bit less though.
Well,
On the new one.
I looked up the description of,
You got a typo. It's B1 or C1 on yours and B1 over here on the current both say 1,800. Just the red line there is 1,600.
well, the red lines are what Dark Sky says lumens to wattage equates to. I don't know where these came from in the original ordinance.
So 2 is same. I mean, it's different. 3, yeah,
They're all just a little bit different, but
they're all a little bit less than the written out one.
Dark sky recommend house and lumens.
well, that's what we have in our ordinance, is 75, and our current ordinance is 75 watts, which equates to 1,100 lumens.
What he's saying, I think on number 1 of C, is that spelled out, it says 1,800, but in parentheses, it says 1,600.
Yeah.
So that's where he was
Thank you.
saying there was a typo.
Okay.
It's not necessarily what the number was. It's just, is it that's spelled out or is it the numeric?
That's
Which are
me.
you
It's-
asking us to change?
It's the numerical. So
Okay.
I would have to retype this. That's my bad. D is different in that we'll have no street lights erected on city streets. Currently, we don't have anything in our building code or policies and procedures or ordinances that says that street lights cannot be put up. And PTR is planning for the future. And we never know who's mayor or who's planning commissioner or whatever. And if the ordinance wanted to be changed where the city concurred that they would like to have streetlights put up, then we could change the ordinance. But I think right now that this really should be included in here, that we don't erect city streets. Now, Wayne has been such a good teacher to me in terms of writing ordinances, and he always emphasizes with me, and I so appreciate his input. How are you going to enforce an ordinance? So how would you enforce this lighting ordinance? Well, I think section E takes care of that. We might have to add zone overlays in light of what we're thinking about in terms of commercial down below. But any new construction would require a architectural lighting plan as part of their permit package. And that would adhere to our city ordinance with fixtures facing down. Now, there is a small hiccup here, and I would like to request that the city get a legal opinion as to whether or not we can request this architectural lighting plan. Wayne pointed out to me that under the state code, it says that it prohibits exterior non-structural architectural ornamentation. And Wayne and I have agreed to disagree on this, and I've gotten an opinion from Dark Sky as well, and they don't think that the state code applies, but
And I think it depends too. Maybe we can ask you your opinion on that. Because we can't do anything architecturally if it's a single dwelling, but if it is a development agreement or a PUD, we can put certain things in place. So it depends on what kind of zoning it is and what kind of structure is being built for the street, for the code. Is that correct?
That is correct. And that code.
Just a reminder, we're recording the meeting, so if everyone that's speaking could speak into the microphone, please. Thank you. And we don't have that many that work, so.
Oh,
So
tell your
I'm,
name on-
yes, I'm Daniel Jensen and I'm with Sunrise Engineering. So yes, that is correct with architectural features. It cannot be regulated with single family homes, twin homes, and is it townhomes as well? But yeah, there's some limitations. Now that code in particular, the one that Sherry read, is about architectural ornamentation. Now, what that means is when we're talking about light shielding, that would mean the ornamental nature of it, not that it's a shield. So we could not say we need you to have some period piece. It needs to be, you know, styled in some Tudor way, or, you know, whatever it is, or it needs to be modern, or, you know, we can't disagree with some property owner based on their architectural choices. Now, that wouldn't preclude a city from requiring a light shielded fixture, provided that they don't tell the owner how it architecturally needs to look. So within the state of Utah, there are 5 communities that have already received dark sky designation as communities. So Moab, Torrey, Helper, Springdale, and I put myself on the spot. There's one more. And in each of those cases, they are they've implemented an ordinance that requires shielding for single-family homes. For new single-family homes, existing single-family homes would not be required to upgrade their fixtures. They are allowed to remain as basically legal non-conforming.
So that would apply here too then, because
Mhm.
that's not the impression I got in reading this ordinance. It was more like there's a deadline of, well, you've got January 1st, 2024, but I don't know if that exactly applies in this case, but it sort of sounded like there was going to be a very heavy-handed, everyone get in line kind of an approach to this.
Yeah, that would be problematic. Typically, an ordinance doesn't apply retroactively. To do that, you'd have to amortize out existing fixtures, which in theory you could do. I can't imagine any community would want to do that, right? I mean, that's not really on the table. But there is a mechanism to do that, and I don't think that's what this code's intending. Sherry, is the intent of it just that it goes into effect that date, and that any new building permit after that date would be required?
Copying and pasting off of Dark Sky.
I kind of thought, because it said
And this was-
Firefly Park.
Yeah, and this was way down, like on page 4 of my Word document, so I don't know how this got here, but it doesn't apply. I've got it crossed out.
So you're not looking to
No.
impose this on any existing structure?
No.
That's more of a voluntary exercise? This is
Correct.
just
And I
new
hope with
construction.
education and things that we would do as a dark sky certified community, people would want to, because they're gonna learn something new and the benefits of it. And the only compliance comes, and I think it's a 5-year period that the city has to comply. And from everything that Wayne and I have discussed, the only compliance, I think, would be putting a motion sensor on your lighting here at City Hall for after 11 o'clock and down by the mailboxes. And everything else is fine. But I think
So
it's
why would
just-
that have to be? Because it's city property then? Is that why
Yes.
there's an exception for that?
The city ordinance for lighting says.
Because
that
Wayne and
has-
I have had some discussions about the motion sensitive lighting here too, and but you're saying that the current ordinance requires us to have motion sensitive lighting, or?
No, it says that it's required, your city lighting is required to be off at 11 PM.
Okay, so that's a dark skies requirement, is what you're saying.
Well,
so-
no, I'm saying
That's the
that would
current.
help to make the city seem like that it's doing something to comply, to set a good example for the community, that security lighting, you put a motion sensor on it.
But what you've got written here, Barry, says uplighting for landscaping and or structure. Uplighting shall be turned off by 10:30 o'clock in keeping with city ordinance 5. The city, what we have in here is actually all shielded
Correct,
and down.
correct.
And so it wouldn't actually need to be shut off.
No, it's just the timing.
No,
That-
there is, it doesn't, that's what I'm saying, what's in this ordinance doesn't say it has to be shut off because it's all down.
10.8.10 has nothing to do with the city. The city's is
No, I'm looking at the
10.9.4.
proposed.
Yeah, on number B, it just says uplighting needs to be
The
turned off. It doesn't have
proposed.
anything about downlighting being
Oh.
turned off. That's what,
Okay,
is that what you're saying, Brian?
Correct.
right,
In
okay.
the proposal, it doesn't say that we would actually have to shut off the city, which I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not in favor of, because I have to come here in the middle of the night, really, really fast,
Right.
fast as I go, but I do.
Yeah, slow down, smell the roses.
But when we're coming here for a fire or an ambulance.
Well, as soon as you entered a certain distance, they would come on if they're motion censored.
It won't be.
Faster
You
than the
get
speed of
close
light,
to the
huh?
building, it will.
Got that fireman sickness you drive like this.
So here's an example of unacceptable or discouraged lighting and acceptable lighting.
Where are you reading from on our page, just so we
So
know?
this is.
Oh,
Yeah, that's the,
This page, okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what we're trying to go for is the acceptable lighting where lighting is facing down and even, what do you want to call them, on those posts on the outside of people's driveways. Currently, we have a lot of these over here. And we want to go where the light bulb is further up so that it's shielded coming down. I would say for the most part, what I see within the city, most people are already doing this. The only exception, I think, might be there are a few homes. We've put in here D, lumens per acre, which is what, I'm under C, number 5. The proposed ordinance, lumens per acre for outdoor lighting shall not exceed 10,000 lumens per acre. This can be accomplished through timing. You know, if certain homes are extremely well lit and have part of it lit to comply to the 1,000 and have the other part of your home lit at a different time to comply to the 1,000.
So Sherry, in your proposal, where do the jelly lights come in? There's quite a few people that have those going all the time. Some of them are constant and some of them are like a cop car and they're just going around and around and around.
They're pre-existing.
And
call them
those would
circuit
be,
lights.
yeah, those are pre-existing, but would they then fall under the 1030? All lighting would be, not just new construction, but all lighting would be off at
Yes.
1030.
And the same thing, I think, would apply to, I call it the Christmas tree salesmen in our community that have those string lights all over their yard and that are on all night long.
Mine turn off, they're on a timer.
Mine too.
Yeah.
If I'm using it.
I mean, I think for the most part, and what was it, 80% on the survey favored dark sky of the 213 people that participated in the survey. And 70% said the city should do something to make this happen. So the citizens are on board, and in order for us to be dark sky compliant, the approval process is, it's easy. It's not difficult, and see if I can get
So
that
you're
there.
saying that we would be in compliant to what Dark Skies is requiring if we upgrade our lighting ordinance as proposed with maybe some tweaks there,
Mhm.
and that we asked, well, and we added in that new construction be in compliance. Those who are existing homes could choose to be in compliance if they wanted to,
Right.
and that we would highlight these acceptable light fixtures and maybe highlight them so that they would know what that meant. But other than that, we wouldn't need to do anything else. Pay the $250.
Pay the $250 in order to requalify every year. There's no fee. We do have to submit like an annual report. And part of the things that homeowners can do, like I say, Dark Sky's done it all for us already. We don't have to come up with anything or reinvent the wheel. Homeowners can take their own, how am I doing? There is a packet in here for homeowners of how are you doing with your lighting? Do your lights have a clear purpose? Is the light directed to where it's needed? Are the lights generating more light than you really need? Are your lights on all night long? Are you using warmer color lighting when possible? Nobody's saying that you have to comply to these things, but it's making people aware. And part of the ongoing process of recertifying is education. We have to hold, we don't have a school, but they say educate schools so they can put this in their science curriculum. I have approached Waterford School in Sandy. I don't know if that would count. And they are definitely interested in dark sky and me doing some kind of presentation. I don't know if that would count towards Woodland Hills, but we have, well, probably not, but, you know, the light pollution coming down this
But
way.
there's a lot of places you can do education.
Yep.
right, in our community.
We can do it. I have contributed to Dark Sky, so I'm a Dark Sky member and I get their newsletter. I can take parts of their newsletter and post it on Facebook. That counts. Janet's newsletter that she puts out, the use of social media, perhaps even a stargazing party at Woodland Hills Days. There is a partial lunar eclipse that weekend, and that would count towards recertification the next year. I think the application process could take up to a year. My understanding is Dark Sky is revising the application process a little bit. But from what I've heard about the revisions, there's nothing, I mean, basically, we're already there. If we have this new ordinance put in place, we're educating the public. We're already there. There isn't a lot that needs to be done in this application. And the annual report, that could be something that PTR would do. I mean, UVU is even willing to come in with their astronomy club, I believe it is, and they will monitor what our light emission is, which apparently we had done 10 years ago. Dark Sky has something on record that Woodland Hills was dark sky compliant 10 years ago because they measured our light. So many people are willing to help. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I just think it would be just such a wonderful thing to have the community be aware of light and what it does in our night sky. We live in an incredible place. It's like our own planetarium. And PTR would like to keep it that way and propose that this is a way that we can do it.
Another question then, Sherry. So this proposed lighting ordinance, there are some things that might need to be updated then because of some of the things that maybe aren't as clear. So it's not on our agenda to vote on tonight, I didn't
Correct.
see. But
No, it has to go
are
to
you-
planning commission
are-
before it
That's
comes to
what
us.
I'm wondering, is
So-
that you're planning on going to planning commission with your proposal, letting them tweak it however it needs to be, and then it will be brought back to us?
Harry, I'd like to take an opportunity here.
Uh-huh.
This is the reason why I asked for this.
Uh-huh.
to have this here. One, I wanted to have Daniel or someone from Dark Skies Committee. Daniel, take your engineering hat off and your Dark Skies, because there's some questions that we're gonna have. that I'd like to get in. But, so, as Sherry said, there was some agreement to disagree between her and Wayne and some ordinances and some state codes. What I wanted to do at this meeting was to, one, get a feel for Dark Skies with the city council. See if it's something that y'all want to proceed, us as a city council want to proceed with looking into. We're not to that stage of saying, of approving anything. If we need to, and this would be probably up to Wayne, if we need to have a look at this, the state code, to have, we would need to authorize some kind of legal review of that, because that is spending city money. Also, if we want to give direction to our planning commission to help with writing this lighting ordinance, that is another thing. So it's not Sherry going to Wayne, it's the city council saying, okay, we are interested in proceeding with this plan, look into this.
Right.
We need to have some legal review of this, which we have first reading. That. And so that's the whole purpose of this presentation, to see what the feel is for the city council. And we would like, I think we've got some questions that we'd like to ask Dark Skies. I know I do. And I'm hoping you guys do as well, because this has been on a topic of discussion for quite some time. So does that answer what you were asking?
Well, yeah, because a lot of times when things are brought to us and we listen and then we say, okay, send it to the planning commission, and then they bring it back. And that was exactly what I was looking at.
Exactly that. And for us to say, we are interested in exploring this and making sure that planning commission knows that, the lawyers, or whoever needs to know that we are behind this more exploration.
Okay, thanks, Brian. And so do you want to now take some time to, okay. Thanks, Sherry.
So yes, I'm on the state board for the Utah chapter for International Dark Sky, as well as I work. So first thing I just want to make sure is clear is that with Dark Sky certification, everything's voluntary, nothing's punitive. While there would be a city code, things are largely voluntary, and the purpose is to bring the community together. Hopefully it's a fun thing. It's not about going after neighbors. It's about branding the community. It's about promoting a resource that already exists in the community, and highlighting an asset that the community has. So it's a fun way to let people know about this asset that's in the community and be able to grow on that. And so with dark sky certification, as Sherry mentioned, there is an application fee, but before that, what would happen is whoever is spearheading this, if it's Sherry or if it's someone from the city, they would reach out to International Dark Sky. They would submit an inquiry. Dark Sky would then take a look at the community, make sure the community is a good candidate. And this is the process for a dark sky community. A dark sky community doesn't have to qualify as of right now in terms of to have a certain darkness, but Dark Sky International is looking at doing that. And I talked with them recently, and they said that based on the data that they have of Woodland Hills, that if they did have a qualification, Woodland Hills would qualify. That's just based on the darkness of the sky, not based on like what lights are out there or anything like that. So that was really good to hear. So if the city were to move forward, there's a $250 application fee. They could work with the state board or UVU, as Sherry mentioned, to have somebody come and collect baseline data to see what the sky, they use what's called an SQM, a sky quality meter, to assess what the darkness of the sky is. And again, that's more just to help understand what are the conditions on the ground, help establish a baseline so we can track things over time so there can be monitoring and see, do the efforts mean anything, right? Do they actually impact what's on the ground? Again, it's not about like regulation or whatever. It's about science and understanding the nature of the night sky in the community. Now, the one thing that is regulatory would be an ordinance, and the Dark Sky International would want to work with the community to have an ordinance in place that points the community in the right direction. Traditionally or historically, I guess up till now, Dark Sky International didn't have a set of standards. They had kind of some best practices, but it was really up to the community to determine how far they want to go with it. However, Dark Sky International, as Sherry mentioned, they've had so many requests that they've said we want to have more of a template ordinance. Not that all communities have to adopt that particular template, but the community would work with Dark Sky International to see of that template. Woodland Hills is an interesting situation in that there's no billboards, there are no exterior lit signs, there's no industrial plants, there's no big commercial. And so a lot of those standards in the template ordinance wouldn't even apply to Woodland Hills. So you could really pare it down, look more at the single family detached lighting standards. So it'd be a much smaller ordinance. So I'm not sure that what Sherry's committee has put together would be sufficient. I just honestly don't know. I'm not saying I think it's not, and I'm being polite. I just don't know. So I don't want to convey that you adopt that ordinance, you're good to go, because you may adopt that ordinance and then in a year find out, hey, let's tweak it a little bit more. That may be on the table. I'm not sure. So if that,
When will that template be available to look at?
the template is available. It was released a few months ago.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on their website. It's a little bit lengthy. It's probably 14 pages or something. But a lot of it's because it also applies to larger communities that have all the things that Woodland Hills doesn't have. There are exceptions in there for public safety. So, you look at best practices, but Dark Sky International understands fire departments, police departments, some public works buildings or whatnot. We need to have some other, public safety standards, and there are things that are more important than preserving the night sky, right? Like we all understand that, but we also wanted to take as many measures as possible to mitigate those impacts while still preserving the lighting needs that we all have. Then after designation, there is a requirement, but again, they're not so draconian. The requirement is that you do one of a few different options. One of those options is to have 2 events, and events is very loosey-goosey. An event can be a public outreach campaign. An event can be a sky, night sky party, star party. An event could be going to a school or something like that. Another option is to just do an outreach campaign. So that is your thing for the year. That's posting a newsletter, posting things on social media. That's very purposeful, just to help residents understand a little bit more about what we're doing, why we're doing it, how it's impactful, what the background is, that sort of thing, just to increase public awareness. Another option is to work with a local school. Since there's not a school in jurisdictional limits, I imagine if, the school that our kids go to in Woodland Hills, if that school were to do something in their science classes about the night sky, that's enough to qualify for the full year. So it's not trying to give a lot of homework to the city, but it's trying to create a situation where over the course of several years, residents are going to learn a little bit more about what it is and why it's important, and hopefully change some hearts. And so the resident that has, like my neighbor, has a really ugly, super bright green light of all things that just shines in my rooms. Hopefully, after a few years of them learning, they will voluntarily want to retire that light and switch to something new without me having to go over to them and being like, excuse me, would you mind, changing this? Because I have to have really annoying blackout curtains, which is all true. And lastly, there is an annual report, but this again is not about like regulation. It's more to help, as they tell me, it's more to help them brag about your community. So it's a little bit of like, what's the community been doing? What's worked? What hasn't? And with that is an audit of just the publicly owned light fixtures. So the 4 lights or whatever it is in Woodland Hills. So at the time of certification, there would be an audit that would list, here's the lights we have, here's a picture of the fixtures. We're not saying you have to go replace those today if they're antiquated ones, but here's what we have now. Here's how bright it is. We have nerds that have all the different tools that can go out there and measure it and tell you what the correlated color temperature is, what the lumen output is. And they can go there each year and just take those measurements, throw that in the report. It's not saying you have to do it next year or the year after to fix it, but the hope is that with some awareness and some more understanding, that as fixtures get replaced, as light bulbs get replaced, we'll transition piece by piece to things that are more environmentally friendly and neighborhood friendly. So that is the designation in a nutshell. One of my big questions is, as I'm putting together the general plan, I know there have been different opinions, and I just want to make sure that whatever I put as a Sunrise on that hat, what I put in the general plan fits the ideas that council has. And right now, I'm just not sure if the city's interested in designation versus just tightening its ordinance. If this is more of a land use thing, if this is more of an environmental thing. And I'm also just not sure what concerns people have and what thoughts. And I would love your guys' questions and everything.
Part of it would be determines if we want to keep going down this path. I personally think it would be a good thing to at least look at. Sherry brought up that the residents, a high number of residents said, yes, this is something we want. Our general plan is a guideline, not structured. So I don't see any reason why we wouldn't put it in the general plan to showcase that this is where our thought process is long term. And then going forward with the planning commission, looking at that template, but also looking at what we already have and how to restructure our ordinance to make sure that we're in compliance with whatever we feel is important. I'm okay with us going down a little bit more of a path to say, what is the reality of this?
And I want to speak to that really quick. You mentioned something really important that I failed to mention. The general plan is not regulatory in nature, it's the vision. And so if it's in the general plan, it doesn't mean the council's hands are tied. It's an idea that gets put on the dartboard, and at a future date, the council can decide, you know what, we thought about it, we don't want to go that way. Or the more we learn about it, we like it, now it's time. And that time might be right when the general plan is adopted. It might be 3 years, 5 years later, right? Or never. So it doesn't tie the hands.
So for my part, oh, go ahead, Brian. Okay.
Couple of things. And he's certainly entitled to do that. Daniel's going around me here. I told him I didn't want dark skies included in the general plan. I didn't think it was appropriate to the general plan. We can certainly discuss it outside the general plan. I have no objections with that. But I'll go on the record and say, when the general plan is done with the planning commission, council's not going to see a dark skies issue there. You certainly are free to do what you want with it. I know it's your plan, but that's my feeling as Planning Commission Chair, that I didn't think that dark skies was appropriate for the general plan. Secondly, the numbers that we used in the survey, they're kind of being used freely. It looks like there was a large percentage of the city that was interested in dark skies, but when you look at it in the detail, it's not. There are some, yes, there's some interest in that here. Another question I have is our city, are we good to have a dark sky designation now without going through the ordinance change for upscaled lighting and et cetera? Do we qualify now from a lighting standpoint for a dark skies designation? I have suggested to Sherry, and maybe this is a roundabout wrong way, but having somebody from dark skies come in, drive around the city at night, look at it and see, and give an assessment. I think your lighting is such that you qualify already for, without having to make any changes to your ordinance to qualify for dark sky. So that's kind of a question to me, as maybe a bit of a test to see what further would need to be done. Also, there's something to be said. We change our ordinances and somebody violates them with having to do with lighting, then we're forced with enforcing them. And so it's not as easy as just changing the ordinances and everybody's going to comply, because they're not. So we're going to be faced with additional possibly fines with people who don't want to comply and going through that whole process. So that's just a negative for changing our ordinances. If we can take our existing ordinances that we have and tweak them a little bit, or realize we maybe need to bring them into the current time period with LED lighting and so forth, but to use those, our existing ordinances, instead of going through a 14-page lighting ordinance and picking and choosing from that as to what we would want to change from an upgrade. But those are just, I'm not against it. I love the dark skies, but there are a lot of related issues, as I think all of you know, that need to be considered in this process. So I just wanted to share those comments with you.
Can you just tell us why you wouldn't want it in the general plan? Because land use, I mean, it is part of that. I guess what I'm looking at is our residents talked about trails and parks, and those kinds of things go into the general plan. So why wouldn't this be considered appropriate for that, in terms of, especially if we're already doing it like you said, just to give a feel of vision and I guess because most people say they move up here for the ambiance, right? They move up here because we have dark skies. They move up here because we have trees and wildlife. So why would that be not considered appropriate for our land use?
I'll just second that. I think that's an ideal place to put the future of our city. I think it gives us an opportunity to educate in the long run. I'm not for enforcement on any of this, but I really support this. And the reason I support it is I live in a neighborhood right here in this city that people have lighting problems, not because they want to. I know my neighbors don't know. They have no idea that their lights shine right into my window all night long because they leave them on all night long. Now, I had lights doing the same thing. And when Sherry started talking about dark skies, I changed my lights outside to motion. And you know it's better? Because when the light goes on, there's something out there. It's so cool. And they stay on for 15 seconds, and I know everything. If the light's on all the time, you don't know squat, you know. It really is ideal. And it's so important to me that the lighting
it needs to be in the general plan, in my opinion, because that's where people gradually learn. They might catch an idea like, oh, you know, that's important to the city. Maybe I ought to consider different lighting. But I want it voluntary. And I want us to have a way to educate. And I believe any little way we can pick at education. I never heard of dark sky until I met Sherry. And I look all around, all of my neighborhood, I look all over the city all the time now, and I notice, you know, that doesn't need to be that way. And I know it's because people don't know.
So Doral, because I mean, you can't get away from enforcement if you have an ordinance, unless would an ordinance that made it a voluntary.
I would put the word.
I mean, because
volunteer.
that would be. I mean, I don't know if that would get us under the dark skies umbrella, but if it were something that made it a voluntary exercise, even at the ordinance level, because I mean, if you've got an ordinance, you've got enforcement, and there's just
Well,
no
the
getting
1030
around that.
thing seems like that would, because we have that for noise and we have other things, so it seems like that could be part of that nuisance ordinance that people would comply with, because they don't like, a lot of people are like Doral, where they notice the light in their shining in their house, but they don't know what to do.
Right. Well,
And
there's
so-
light trespass
Mhm.
approaches that can be
Yeah, that
taken
could be
civilly.
put into our, it could be put into as part of that, and as people were educated, they'd say, oh, 1030, only motion sensor? Oh, yeah, that's no big deal.
And,
Right.
and Mayor, I think the enforcement would come from them submitting a lighting plan when they're building, right?
Mhm.
But then if they don't comply with it,
I mean, if it's in their plan, yeah, I mean,
We can't require a lighting plan. State
Well,
law
we could
doesn't allow us
suggest
to
it.
do that. We can suggest, we can maybe suggest to people they want, but we can't require it. We have 13 elements that the state has identified that we can ask for in a site plan. And lighting plan is not one of them.
and I will say though that I do like the branding of dark skies. I mean, that to me, the certification mark that you get with dark skies, I think that is a worthwhile thing. Okay, we'll get to you in just one second, okay? But I the enforcement, that's my only role on this, but my concerns echo what Wayne was saying, so.
And just a little downside, if a burglar comes up here, where's he going to go? Is he going to go to a house that's got lights on it around? Or is he going to go to some dark house and maybe find a motion light? Maybe, maybe not. I'm just saying there's two sides to that.
it comes
We've
back
chosen
on
to leave the lights on here.
That's what guns are for, Wayne.
Yeah,
And dogs, I got dogs.
good point. That's one reason we've chosen to leave the lights on here, is it's a safe place for people coming up here at night, driving by themselves, and the mailbox is included, because there's been talk about shutting the lights off at the mailboxes. We've decided to leave them on there. Somebody gets out of their car at night, wants to get their mail. We don't want them to get accosted. Somebody's not hanging around the mailboxes with it all lit up, waiting for somebody to arrive in the dark of night. So there's two sides to lights and non-lights, and we need to
Well,
realize
you
that.
said there
And
were some exceptions for public safety on public property. So that would be in consideration. And the lighting here has the downcast, so I mean, I think there's possibilities.
So I'd like to respond to a couple things real quick. Councilmember Hutchings mentioned legal definition, property rights ombudsman office. It would be a free service, and I'm sure this question has come to them before. So
Yeah.
you may want to reach out to them without having to pay money.
Yeah.
And they are attorneys over there. So probably a good first stop, right? And they may say, we don't know, contact your attorney. I don't know. The other thing is enforcement, and this has come up in every single community that has done this. From what I've seen of the communities I've spoken to in Utah who have gone through certification, is that they have not used like your misdemeanor B or your infraction enforcement mechanism. Essentially, it's like Councilmember Lunt said, when they go, because this would apply to new lighting, right? So when a builder would come in with a submittal, you'd make sure that it complies and that the light fixture complies. Now, of course, once they go and construct that, they could, for some weird reason, decide they want to remove that and put something in that's non-compliant. So you could have a situation like Wayne suggesting where a new home is all of a sudden out of compliance. I have actually not seen a city that has wanted to like enact legal enforcement, because this is more encouragement about education. Now, with that being said, the ordinance typically, I haven't seen one that just kind of like, we kindly ask you to please do so. And so we do run that, but I mean, we see that all the time where a city has like a noise ordinance, as Councilmember Malkovich pointed out, and we're not going around with noise meters, listening to every, house who has a teenager, even though we know many of them aren't compliant. So that's a policy decision for you guys.
Fair enough. Thank you.
So I'm going to suggest a compromise here. I understand Wayne's thought, and I actually take something from you, Daniel, because you said the general plan, a lot about it, is not a regulatory type. So would it be appropriate to put in the general plan something along the lines of that we are wishing to harmonize with
Nature.
Nature, including, our wildlife, our skies, our trees, we're woodland hills after all. Is that something we can put in there and not actually say dark skies? And dark skies can be an initiative that we actually choose to do separately from the general plan. But we put in the general plan that we want to harmonize with nature, including our skies, our view of the heavens that we have here, that many don't.
It also depends on the language I put in there, right? I could put it as pursue certification, or I can put something like explore certification, right? One that's more of like a kind of a mandate, even though it's not regulatory, and then another that's kind of like a directional, right? Like
I like that
explore
directional
this.
one.
See, and I struggle with that because we just came up with something the other day where someone was wanting to change zoning. And in our general plan that was previous, the zoning was planned for this new zone. And to me, that was an obligation that I needed to change that zone. I don't want to have that obligation if Dark Skies comes back and says, "Oh, we're gonna fine the city $10,000 if they don't comply in the future." I'm just saying that. So and then we decide to abandon it, and then someone comes back and says, litigious society, as we very well know, that we have ruined their home and caused them to have depreciation in their home value.
Or if they got robbed or something.
Or they get, whatever it is. That's why I'm hesitant after listening to discussions of actually putting dark skies in.
I like the idea of putting in explore though, because that's just a forward thinking word. It doesn't imply that you're taking action. Just says
It's not a shall.
yeah. Yep. And I don't know. Kind of going off of what Doral said earlier, I think that, it does bring an added value to the community when people are looking at the ambiance, what is Woodland Hills? That's what that's what they want preserved, is our mountain home life. And I think that the words actually add to that in overall. I mean, people are wanting us to put in trails for animals. They want us to make sure we have trails for people. There's a lot of things that bring our mountain community to what it is, and giving that sense of confidence that we're looking at in every aspect of it, I think it's helpful.
Balancing it with property rights, though.
Yes,
I don't know who you are,
exactly.
but please come up and
Obviously.
speak your piece.
Always balancing with property rights.
I'm Frederick Held. I'm a professor of physics at UVU astronomy.
Welcome.
Guys.
Cool.
And Woodland Hills is one of the few places in Utah Valley that you can see the Milky Way. And I think that's an asset to the community. And you can see a lot more up in the sky. And I think it comes down to whether or not you want to keep it that way in this community, or let it go away, because as we get more and more housing in here, the light pollution will increase. And we'll reach a point, 80% of young people have never seen the Milky Way. If you go to Orem and you try to see something in the sky, you might see the moon, you see the very brightest stars, first magnitude stars maybe, planets. And that's what you see. And here in Woodland Hills, you really have, you're outdoors, you know, this is the woods. This is, you know, this is where people would like to be.
Seen the rings of Saturn. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And,
Right.
and it truly is a beautiful asset to the community. And if you look around this valley, it's one of the only places where you can see the Milky Way.
Especially on the bench too. I mean, it's something that without having to go up a
That's right.
canyon or very rural.
We're actually higher here than Mount Wilson in California with the 100-inch reflecting telescope. Not much higher, but we're a little higher. So they go up for the view. We're even a little higher, and we really have the view. But I think it's changing. I've done star parties in the area for maybe about 10 years. And I remember it was easier to see the Milky Way with the Great Rift across it. The Great Rift, you're familiar with that? It's the dark part of the Milky Way. You see the luminous, is the star in the central part of our galaxy behind it, and then you see this dark stretch of gas and dust that is dark. It's not luminous. And it's harder to see that than it is to see the luminous part.
I'd love to have a star party during Woodland Hills Days.
Yeah.
On the
I think
Friday
they're
night.
actually
I think
planning
so.
to-
Let's do.
I think that'd be
I'm
great.
over Woodland Hills Days, so yeah, I'd love to have a star party. I think that'd be fabulous.
Yeah.
Big time.
So I find this topic extremely conflicting in my soul.
Really?
Wow. So when I lived in Botswana, I lived just on the edge of the Kalahari Desert. And there was a few nights that we walked, you know, at night, and there they don't have money for lights, so it's not a problem. But looking up in that sky was transformative. You could see everything, you know, the Southern Cross, the Milky Way. It looked, you could see our galaxy, and it makes you feel very small, which I think we all probably could use a little bit of that more often. The other part of me then is now as a civil servant from an authoritative standpoint. I fear the weaponization that I know potentially could happen with residents against resident, right? I personally, I live very, very close. I live the closest to the city building in this room. And the city lights don't ever bother me at all. Across the street from me, I know I've talked about this before, so just be patient with me, but I have an elderly woman who lives alone who's in her 90s. And she gave me a bit of a heart attack last night because she didn't have her porch lights on, so I was scared she was not feeling okay or there was something wrong. But she has her porch lights on, and they blast into my window, and because of who she is, I love it. Because I know she's there and she is safe. And that helps her sleep. And those, you know, I would hate for somebody else to say by my home, use this ordinance to, you know, weaponize against her. And I'm not using just one individual, but in any case. And so as we've talked about this and discussed it, the authoritarian potential of this and property rights and everything else, while also loving the night sky and enjoying the fact that we do live in a place that's, you know, it's not right off the Kalahari Desert sky. because we still have Salem and Provo, and we still get all their light pollution up here. But I'm of a split mind, and I am completely a 100% undecided. But I think we need to be very, very careful as we think about this, as we think about the potential of the weaponization, as we think about the rights people have. I think as we think about what does light trespass look like, and maybe that's an enforceable item versus just somebody who has, little twinkle lights in their trees. I think this is going to be a very complex potential ordinance if done right, and I think a lazy written ordinance could cause us catastrophic problems. And so I want us to be very, very cognizant of that, and that's
And
my
didn't we
thoughts.
say that it wouldn't be retroactive to any existing homes, only future construction?
Yeah.
And so
Potentially.
then other people would be more of a choice as
So here
as
in this
education increased.
proposed, in B, right, City Ordinance 5.1.5. Now, in my opinion, that ordinance has nothing to do with lighting. That's the nuisance ordinance, which is predominantly sound.
Sound.
Right? So we would have to, for this to be applied here to the 10:30 p.m., that ordinance would then need to be changed to also enforce lighting, which I can only imagine Wayne's joy and Sergeant Dudson's joy receiving phone calls now from 10:30 p.m. on, more so than already. Like I said, I find that there is extreme complexities here because I could technically, as I use my example of my beautiful neighbor, I could use this against her. Even though she has grandfathered lighting, this is not something, the nuisance ordinance is not a grandfatherable ordinance. Because I've had parties loud at my house forever. You can shut me down today. You can't grandfather the nuisance ordinance. And so those are the types of concerns that I have with this proposal currently.
Okay, thanks, Ben. And thanks, Professor. We appreciate that commentary. And in the interest of time, I mean, we could go on all night with this. So I think that if the council has any additional comments or questions, I hopefully this addresses or gets you to a point where you wanted to get, Brian, in terms of steering this forward, at least in terms of measuring interest levels, or if you want to take a poll right now, or however you want to do it. But I just
Are
think
Are we at a point where we're interested in exploring it further?
Yes.
The application, Daniel, do we have to pay the application fee to start that whole process? We can actually put in a letter of interest, right?
Oh, and Jody, I'm sorry, you had something to say too. So Daniel, when you're done, Jody, if you want to chime in.
Yeah, you would submit I think it's called an inquiry or whatever it is first. And once Dark Sky has taken a look at it and said, yeah, you're a good candidate, then you'd move forward with the actual application and application fee. Essentially, they don't want a bunch of cities submitting money when they have no business applying.
They can't make it. So
Good to know.
I think, I don't remember who said it, and I apologize, Jody. I would love to see, do we qualify now?
That was
Before change, thank you, Wayne. I'd love to see, do we qualify now to be classified? I love if we could get classified as Dark Skies. I think the brand, the optics, what it would do for our community, I love it.
well,
Like I said, the weaponization.
we'll need to look at the ordinance and the set standard that they have. So we'll have to look at that. Jody?
I think looking at the ordinance would be helpful, and just looking at Helper and Moab, there was
Torrey,
Grand
Castledale.
County, they all require that in 5 years, all lighting in the city has to be brought up to date. So we would be requiring our current residents to bring the lighting up to date. So that's and that could be the case, but that is a burden that we would be placing
Yep,
on our
for
residents
sure.
as a cost. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but if we had to do the city center and
thank
the
you.
mailboxes and the park, that would be a financial burden we are having to cover through our taxes.
Yep.
So we do have to consider that.
Yep. Okay, well, a more lively debate to come. Okay, thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Sherry, and those who participated. All right, with that, and thanks, Brian. We'll move on
me.
to item
Blame
3.
me.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I guess it depends on how I
That's what
say
I was
thanks.
hearing.
Way to go.
Chris, it is Chris's anniversary, so if he cut off early, I
Let's take
would not fault him.
Well, Sherry's gotta,
But
yeah,
his wife's out of town.
Yeah, well,
you gotta stop screen sharing, Sherry. Okay. I'm glad you know how. I don't, so I'll get a lesson one of these days. Hi, Chris.
Hello, how you doing?
For line 2.
Can you hear me okay?
well, we'll really move forward quickly with the others. All right, take it away, Chris.
Okay, you can hear me okay? Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah, you're good.
Great. Real quick, the financials are going to be relatively quick because we went over detailed financials during the budget retreat last week or the last council meeting, and these financials were older than what we talked about. So unless you guys have any questions on those, we can move to the schedule, if that's okay, and I can share the schedule with you guys for the rest of this budget year, depending on truth and taxation and some of those kind of things, which still have not been determined at this point, but we are in the process of still determining if, if that's the route you guys want to go. But sorry, I had the email up with the calendar on it. Give me 1 second. It slipped away.
It changed from last time.
It did. I sent it to you guys on an update.
While
The
back.
last update, and that was, I don't believe anything has changed since then. And I had that up and I've lost it. Jody, you don't happen to have that up by chance, do you?
So we'll have a public hearing on the Tuesday after Memorial Day, which is the 27th, and that'll be on the proposed 2026 fiscal year budget. And then on the second meeting in June, which I had a date, I believe.
Oh, it
Oh,
was,
you just have it.
June 10th.
That was the city agenda.
June 24th
Oh.
is
Got it.
when we'll do a public hearing on the 26th, the final 26th, and a any budget changes to the 2025. The 24th or the 27th of May will be like the preliminary one that we have to do. So
So I think it's the same as it was.
it is.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions or comments on that?
Have it in my calendar. Sure.
All right. Well, that's items 3 through 5.
we're moving now.
Yeah. I
Just
told
trying to
you.
help you, but Janet's favorite. So Janet, I'm glad I'm a couple miles away from you because Ted's asking for something.
No, he's not here. He doesn't get to ask.
So Doral and I have been ordered to give you the stink eye.
We're supposed to you outside or something.
Right.
Oh, we're ganging up on me now. I see how this works.
I told Ted to just wait till you were out of town.
I don't go out of town. I'm the watchdog now.
We can't hear.
I actually can't remember if this has been approved or not, but he's looking to get some updated extrication equipment, some electronic jaws, and I don't know if it's some cutters and some batteries and stuff. He has the budget for this. It's $12,655. He did tell me it is on state budget. or state contract, so we don't need to go out to bid or those kind of things. And he would like to get this purchased.
Chris, didn't we purchase something?
Yes, we've
Before?
got the spreaders. We
We
need
got its brother,
we need the
yeah.
rest of it.
Oh, this is just the complete.
So
list.
we now
It's
have
in
to
our
carry,
budget, Jan, so we're good.
we have to carry multiple pieces of equipment to accomplish the same thing.
And what is it called? It's the light.
So this
shining
is the
there.
cutter, and then this is I believe this is the other spreader that we roll dashes with and
Okay.
pop tops and stuff like that.
This is basically an expensive can opener.
Uh-huh, but it's
Very,
pretty
very important, expensive can opener.
Yeah.
And of the worst kind.
I don't know if you guys still use the hydraulic ones, but these are so much safer than those hydraulic ones, and you don't have to carry so much equipment out, and just nice.
We still carry the hydraulic ones because we only have the electric spreader.
When the truck hit the roundabout, we had to cut them out of the truck.
Oh, right. I
And
remember
it was
that.
with the hydraulic ones. It was a long knife.
So this is already in our budget, and so
Yeah.
it's
Yes,
just
he's been
approving it
planning
because
this.
it's over
Correct.
a certain
Yeah.
amount. Okay.
Okay,
See, I have no issue with that.
nice.
Wow.
And what,
See, Ted, you need to be way longer, more often.
Yeah.
Ryan, Doral, and I got it. You can go home
All right.
We
if
want
he ever watches this recording. So
we want to fight.
You want
Okay,
to fight?
And I don't think there's, is there any sale
Yes.
of equipment that we?
Well, I do want to give an update. And I tried talking to Ted, but we just haven't been able to connect. So I listed a bunch of equipment that we have for sale, including our skid steer. And I can happily say that we have about $49,000 in cash going to be coming into the budget.
Great.
oh,
Everything's sold, with the exception of the bed from the utility truck. So we took the original bed off, put the new utility bed on. We set a minimum for that at $1,000. We got it bid up to $550, and I had someone contact me who was asking, well, what's your reserve? He wanted to know what the reserve was for it, which I don't give that out because I want to see the bid go up. And after the sale ended and it didn't meet the reserve, he called me back up and said, I really want this bed. He said, what was your reserve? I said, well, it was $1,000 and it only bid up to 550. He says, I'll give you the $1,000 for it. He needs a bed for a truck that he just bought. So what I'm hesitant to do that, even though we've gone through the bidding process, but I'm hesitant to do that on my own. And would like some consensus that I can go ahead and sell that.
and it was on the site for long enough that
Yeah,
you
2
feel like
weeks.
everybody
2
saw it,
weeks.
and it
It
only
went-
went to 550.
it-
I don't see any reason.
Yeah,
If
I'd
he
say
had
do
dropped
it.
1,000, he would have gotten it. So
Yes.
I have no
And he
problem with
didn't, he didn't bid it up, and that's why I'm not comfortable doing it on my own. And the one bad thing about the sale of all the equipment, and I spent about 4 hours with the Utah Tax Commission. The company that bought the skid steer is from Montana or Wyoming, one of the two. I think it's Montana. And he's sending a truck to come pick it up. And my understanding is he'd have to pay sales tax, which we get 50% of.
Oh,
Turns out that they're tax exempt and it's in the state code, and it took them about 4 hours to find that code. I was on forever trying to get that done. I actually got hung up on once, and I called back and I said, listen, I'm a city council person. Please don't hang up on me again. Which I apologized for later because I swore I would never do that.
So it was tax exempt because
Okay.
it was another government agency that was buying
No,
it,
it's not a
or-
government agency, but when you ship it via common carrier, regardless of who that common carrier is, they're taking possession of it in another state, and their state is tax exempt, so they don't pay tax there.
Oh,
And
I
we
see.
can't collect tax here, so we don't get that extra tax. Everything else has gone taxable. And
Because
the
if it
bed-
would have been delivered, it would have been delivered to a
if he would have
non-tax.
come here and got it,
Mhm.
he would have had to pay our tax.
Right.
But, and if we delivered it there, it would have gone non-tax. But because it's common carrier, there's actually a section in our tax code that he told me about, and I'm like, oh, I've got to check on this, and so I spent lots of time on hold.
Interesting.
And So we don't get the extra tax on that because that gets tacked on, but we will get a percentage of the rest of it. We actually had a $40,000. Actually, Chris and Ted recommended a $40,000 reserve on the skid steer, and we got 47. So we did pretty good.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we bought it out of its contract for what, 35 or something? So-
Yeah, that one we actually made money on. I mean, some of this other stuff, these are sort of, oh, yeah. Whoops.
Don't tell Ted, he'll spend it.
Well, I'm just saying that most of the stuff we're selling, it's better utilization than what it was just sitting there rotting.
And we've got another pallet downstairs that I need to list, and I've gone through, and Toby needs to get some clarification with Ted on a few other items that we're never going to use. And so we're looking at auctioning those as well. Most
Sounds
of
like
it's
we're doing the
small.
Swedish death cleaning of the shop
Have
downstairs.
you been down there? It's
Yes.
gorgeous.
Oh, I know.
It's gorgeous down there. Love it.
Looks great.
Yeah, no, I think that you've been working wonders, so.
I have to go into the furnace room to get stuff for my events and banners, and I can actually get back there now. Where before it was kind of a death trap because I had to climb over, under, and around through to get in there. And then
Wayne-
trying to carry, containers out of there was a
Wayne and
little
I both
tricky.
got outbid on
Yeah.
items, so, you guys can bid on them.
Better luck next time.
Thanks for
Okay.
running it up.
If
Oh,
Ben just
Yeah,
would've
yeah,
got
no
it, we
kidding.
would have got the tax.
All right, thank you, Brian. And thanks, Chris, unless there's anything more from you. Okay, item 8, I received a request for us to participate in an interlocal agreement to assist with the homeless. It's based on a per resident calculation, and I mean, our calculation, I think it would be less than $200, but it is an agreement, so I don't think the amount of money is the issue, but I would be signing it and wanted to run it past you. But I think that, it's important that we carry our weight in terms of offering what we can to the homeless in the area through the county facility. So,
Well, and
that's
I'm
what
glad
this is
that they just asked you to do this. Salt Lake County, it's actually forced participation. So at this point, if we can voluntarily support it, then maybe it will be kept that way going forward.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't do the math, Jody. I don't know if you did, but I mean, I think it would be $200. And so, I mean, unless you want to offer more, but it's again based on the number of residents. I don't like to be generous with other people's money, which is what this is, but at the same time,
I know a lot of our residents do go and help in the warming centers in Provo, and they've had organized efforts to drive over there together. And so I think our residents would feel that this was a good use of our
Okay.
funds.
Well, I mean, so we can do 200, we can do 500. Does anybody have any input on that? And it's an annual thing, so it would be something that, or do you have any objections?
I have no
Okay.
objections.
So maybe up to 500, if that would be,
I'm okay with that.
Yep.
okay. All right, thank you.
As long as it doesn't come out of Jody's budget.
No, it comes out of
Higher.
Ben's salary.
Oh.
There we go.
I don't think my salary goes up at 500.
Yeah, it's 2 years of salary.
It comes out of surplus sale, but revenue.
Oh, is
Right,
that
yeah,
what it
no
is?
kidding.
Yeah, but when you have to run for office, you spend more than you make
Than
in
you
the,
make,
like,
In
the
the
first
whole
2
year.
years.
Yeah, you're
So
just
for
finally
me,
catching up on your
and
campaign
after
expenses.
2 years, you catch up on what you spent to run.
Right,
That's why you hang on to your sign.
yeah.
I know, gonna have to power wash those things.
Okay, item 9, grant updates. Woodland Hills Culvert Project, Phase 1, Ted's not here, so unless somebody else has something about that, which I
Just
don't
table
expect.
that till Ted's back.
Ready, set, go, grant.
Isn't that what we use for chipper days?
Yep.
Yep, so.
Okay.
It's Ted too, and I don't think he's had to put it in yet.
Okay. Utah County Outdoor Recreation.
Is this the one
Or
you asked me
recreation
about,
grant.
Jody, that I haven't responded to?
Yes, this proposal is due June 9th for this next year. Are you going to write it or do you want me to write it? And whoever writes it, what are we proposing we do with the $1,000 for the park?
I'm
I
guessing
thought we were doing wood
you want
chips.
her to write it.
Yeah, I thought that was to
Well,
recoup the wood chip expense. or-
That was last
was
year's.
last year.
We
Oh,
have
I
a new
thought we
one.
were gonna roll it, just wood chips, wood
Want me to
chips,
just
wood
keep
chips,
doing wood chips?
I mean,
can do that.
that's something I don't think we want to skimp on.
No,
Nope.
we had to pay a lot because we needed a lot. We need to keep it up.
I'd
Yeah.
say just slam in $1,000 worth of wood chips every year and
Wood chips and if there's any maintenance
Yeah.
that needs
Yeah.
done in there.
Okay.
Playground, right?
Any repairs to playground
Oh, yeah.
equipment
Yeah.
or things like that? Okay.
That's what
I
I would do.
will
bag of bolts.
get something together and have it for the next meeting because the mayor does need to sign off on it. So,
So yeah,
Thank
playground
you.
maintenance and wood chips.
Okay.
Outdoor
So,
grant?
yeah, the outdoor grant. I actually,
That Sherry?
I'm, okay. So, okay, so I didn't know it by title. That's the one with the pickleball court then. Okay.
Oh,
You gotta label it as the pickleball grant. That's outdoor, it's too broad of a stroke.
Yeah.
Okay, and the Mag Trail feasibility grant, I know Ted's working on that. I don't know what the latest is on it, but. Okay, and then 10A and B, unless Ted charged either of you with
Nope.
Public Works or Fire Department. Okay, then Wayne, any updates on code enforcement? He begins with a deep sigh.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
I guess I want to go on the record.
Just no
with
names.
something. I wrote an article in the newsletter about the process for individuals who wanted to file a complaint regarding code violation. And there was a response by somebody named Anonymous. So I have a little idea of who that might be. And he basically called me a liar. He or she, thank you, and said that I wasn't doing code enforcement. So I just want to set the record straight that the city does do code enforcement, and all the complaints that we get, we do follow up with them, and fortunately, a good share of them are remedied, and we're still working with some through that process. So I just wanted to publicly share that detail.
No, and
Thanks.
you deserve to have those accolades separately. So I certainly agree that you have done great work in terms of code enforcement and balancing. You know, that we are trying to. I mean, we work for the residents, so we're not trying to be tyrants, but we have codes that we're expected to enforce. But I think you've done great work. So thank you, Wayne.
And I was just gonna say, I've actually personally filed a complaint and I know that Wayne has worked on it, so I know that he's doing code enforcement.
Yeah,
So.
and enforcement does not mean crime free. I mean, I don't know a
Right.
single law enforcement organization that, except maybe
I
in
need-
China or Saudi Arabia or something, but we don't want that.
Well, and a lot
Sherry?
of times,
Oh, go ahead, Carrie.
well, a lot of times too, somebody might think it's a code enforcement and turn it in, and then you investigate and find out, well, they might not like it as a neighbor, but it's not against any code we have. And so, I mean, I had somebody who called me the other day about one, and I said, you might not like it, but it's not against the code. And I showed him where, and he's like, oh, okay. And so I think we get some of those people as well. Some are legitimate and some are just concerned. So thank you, Wayne.
Just a quick update. Sergeant Dutson, Ted, and I had a follow-up meeting with the resident up on Eagle's Nest. You all had a meeting before that, and Ted wanted the second meeting I was with so that he could study the ordinance. And he explained the ordinance there at the dinner table to he and she, and it ended very positively. They appreciated the detailed explanation that Ted gave, and everything's moving forward now in
Yeah, no, that's good. A constructive.
Then
and-
it's on the first meeting.
Okay, Sherry, go ahead. You've waited.
Yeah, it's on. In terms of code enforcement, Wayne's suggestion with regards to dark sky was perhaps dark sky could drive around and see if we're already compliant. My suggestion is Wayne drive around now and see if we're compliant with our current ordinance. I can tell you we're not. I've almost hit a deer because of certain people's lights that are so bright when I come up the road. We are just an idea, Wayne, that we take a proactive rather than a reactive and waiting for the public to come to the city.
Okay, fair point. Although it does still add a layer of ordinances that we have to enforce, which is, I think, Wayne's point. Okay. Moving on to 11A, SESD. We had our meeting today and had one yesterday. I don't have anything to report, and the MAG meeting I did not attend. So that's all for me. Councilmember Hilliard.
I have not had a board meeting as well.
Okay.
So nothing from me.
Councilmember Hutchings.
So Mount Nebo met, and I wasn't able to make that one either. But I've talked about the groundwater model that they've been working on for a couple of years, and we got the results to that. And I just wanted to share a little bit, and I will send it out to all of y'all. With the exception of it looks like Elk Ridge, our historic high water levels are Elk Ridge and us are the highest in all of Mount Nebo Water District. And our proposed groundwater levels are also up there. We're pulling off the same aquifer, I'm assuming, and we are way above, miles above everybody else. And for the last thing, so what the projection is as of right now for safe yield groundwater withdrawal threshold, when the groundwaters that we're pulling from is going to be too low for us to be stable, they're looking at projected healthy aquifer to 2065.
Okay. I know when I'm selling my house.
So I'll send this out to each one of you that came out, and I've been kind of reviewing it, going over the meeting that I missed, and we're looking really good on our groundwater levels, our aquifer levels. So
Great.
It's really good here.
Yeah, we don't want the well to run dry.
No.
No.
Okay.
Was
Thanks,
there
Brian.
anything on the South Valley one?
No, I did not make either meeting, and they never send out the
We do what we can.
we do what we can.
Okay, Councilmember Kinnison.
The board met primarily to vote on the budget. The budget for this next fiscal year was approved unanimously. Our costs, projected costs, went up $1,800 for this next year, and so that's looking pretty good. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Doral, sorry, Mayor. Were you able to ask him about on hold? And when the call's on hold by chance?
There's more to talk about offline with you
Okay.
on that. The meeting was right before that occurred, but yeah, there's more to that story, I think.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Councilmember Lunt.
Nope, everything's going good. I reported on everything 2 weeks ago, on my stuff. So we're just plugging along. Everything's going good.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Malkovich.
We haven't met, so no report.
Okay. Thank you. Items for upcoming city council meetings. I mean, we've got budget cycle, so that's a biggie.
I'm not doing it again.
No, I thought it was great. I
It's
mean,
a good conversation.
I
I
could-
did too. I thought it was really good that we had that discussion.
Yep, I think so too.
No, Ted, we really move.
Yeah. We,
Carrie, do you want to do a newsletter for this next month since you
Sure.
missed out on last time?
Yeah,
If not, I can do it, but I just wondered if you wanted the
Yes.
opportunity.
I will.
So
You want to do like this?
the
some-
23rd, 24th, just before the end of it's a holiday, there's a holiday in there, so.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break and reconvene at 8:25 then.
Okay.
And chipping starts this next week. We should probably mention that. So that everybody, in case anybody listens, that,
Oh, you mean in here?
yeah, just because announcing Chipper starts on Saturday or Sunday, something like that. Yep. And so just to remind our residents there to get that last little bit out.
Yeah.
Trying.
I know. Well, no, there's a few people. Don't.
Yes, they do.
Not why.
Um,